Welcome to New Stripe City, a YouTube channel for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie. Sorry, guys, that I've been away for a while. There's a good reason that I've been away. Got some life changes happening. New job. Had a birthday for my son. Just had some family things going on. Some events I had to attend to. But I don't want to bore you with any of that. The good news is I did get the new job. It is a life-changing job for sure, lifestyle-changing job. But I'm here for the Bengals, man, and I know you guys have been wondering where's Ace at, where's he been at. We need to talk more about stuff. The last time you see me, I was actually on a call, a YouTube call with Zim Hude and my guy John Sharon. If you haven't checked that out, definitely circle back and check that out. But I want to talk about several topics today. This is now the second day of free agency. I believe the official deals will come in tomorrow. So today is the 12th as I'm recording this. I'm recording this on this day. I want to talk about several things. First, we can talk about the first move that happened. And the Bengals re-signed CJ Uzomah. They brought him back on a 3-year deal, and I actually kind of like this move. Like, some people feel like he might have been overpaid, but I feel like CJ Uzomah essentially earned that money over the time that he was here. This was a guy that, if you go back and watch my video when he was first drafted, I criticized the guy. I didn't know what the Bengals were doing because he came from an offense where he never blocked. He was more of a wide receiver. But then as time went on, I was more impressed with him. His size, his improvement from year to year. I also wasn't a big fan of Tyler Kroft, even though Tyler Kroft has had a better year than he has so far. But for me, I was very happy with the signing. The Bengals had literally every single tight end that they had initially went into free agency this year. That includes Tyler Eifert. That includes Tyler Kroft and Uzomah. I actually wanted Uzomah back. I wanted him back over Kroft. Now, it still remains to be seen whether or not Tyler Eifert will be coming back. This is day 2 now. I haven't heard him visiting with any other teams. I would expect that the Bengals would try to bring him back. But I really like the deal for CJ Uzomah. 3 years, $18 million. That gives us an average salary of $6 million a year. But the thing is, we don't know what the guaranteed money is. So that's not to say that all of that money is guaranteed. I think it's a decent deal for somebody like him. Puts him in on a number that kind of makes him around the middle of the league, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of average salary. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it by no means makes him a top paid tight end. So then the Bengals also brought back Brendan Wilson, a safety that we haven't really gotten to see. Played most of his time on special teams, came out of the University of Houston. I have no problem with that. I believe he was a teammate of William Jackson III, so not mad at that, but not a guy that's going to have a huge impact on this team. And then we just had the meltdown pick of the day, which was Bobby Hart re-signing, and there were a couple of errors that were made on the deal. Initially, they said it was 3 years, $21 million. It comes out today that it was really 3 years, $16 million, and literally only 1 year of that contract is basically guaranteed. So the Bengals can actually walk away from that contract after this season. They can actually leave it in 2020. So not that big of a deal as people are making it from a compensation standpoint. So I've heard people that are kind of mixed on this. There's some people that, obviously did not want Bobby Hart back at all. And then there's others that wanted him back, but not at that price because the price was pretty ridiculous. But I'm going to say several things on this topic. Number one, I feel like I wasn't a Bobby Hart fan, and I'm by no means trying to put a cape on for Bobby Hart. But he was better than Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher. Even when he stepped in last year, he really had some ups and downs. But one game that really stuck out for me for him that was actually positive was his game against T.J. Watt. And a lot of people might not remember, but I believe it was the first matchup against T.J. Watt. He literally shut him out, and T.J. Watt was coming in that year as going for being the leader, in sacks. So that was very impressive. But he definitely struggled at points last year. I didn't have a problem. Like, let me just get my opinion out there. I didn't have a problem with bringing him back. It was just the number that I saw. And bringing him back at $5 million a year. Just to me, I wasn't necessarily surprised because Jim Turner said that he really liked Bobby Hart, thought that he could do more with him. But I think that we saw the best that Bobby Hart had to offer. Now, also remember, Bobby Hart was actually handpicked by Frank Pollock. Frank Pollock brought him in, decided to start him, thought he was leaps and bounds better than Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher. But to me, I just think that the number that they brought him in at was a little too much. But the thing is, to me, it just signifies that they are not adhering to Marvin Lewis's request of improving the line. That was the advice that he kind of gave to Zach Taylor coming in. So I really want to see what they can do here. But it seems as if, judging from some of the moves that have been made, Zach Taylor and his staff have evaluated and reviewed the film on these players. So apparently they think that there's something that they can get out of them. Now, this has to be said. A lot of people are complaining on Twitter that, they're re-signing a lot of the guys that were on that 6-10 team. Just because that team went 6-10, that does not mean that that team did not have talent on it. Me personally, I think Marvin Lewis was not really good of getting the best play from a lot of these players. And sometimes you see these guys go on to other teams and thrive under other coaching staffs. That's not to say that they shouldn't be looking at outside guys. You guys know that I wanted Jawan James, but Jawan James is going to go sign for an average salary of $12 million somewhere. We just got Bobby Hart for an average of $5 million. Now, me personally, I felt like if this was the way that you were going to go, I would rather you probably take a right tackle in the draft over paying Bobby that much. But, essentially you have a 1 year out, so it could be a 1 year rental of Bobby Hart. We see how he does under Jim Turner. It could end up being a decent pickup for us. Now, he did give up 10 sacks last year. That is bad. Obviously, that's very bad. But apparently, I'm not a coach. I'm not an offensive line guy. Apparently, Jim Turner was impressed with this guy. Frank Pollock was impressed with this guy. He started him for several games. They think that they must have something there in Bobby Hart that they can get out. Now, I think CJ Uzoma, to me, has a more realistic chance of that gamble paying off. But we'll have to see what happens. Maybe he fits in this scheme. Who knows if it's going to be a zone blocking scheme. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the scheme for blocking is actually going to change. I think that was one of the reasons that Pollock didn't want to stay. But we'll have to see what that is. But to me, I didn't like the compensation. But when you're talking about the play, it's like sometimes I feel like our fans go overboard and act like this guy is just like Cedric Ogbuehi, who was leaps and bounds worse than him. But I'm by no means saying that Bobby Hart is good. He was trash at certain points last year. But I think that he's an average tackle. Can they get him to play above average? Like, if you got it to the point where Bobby Hart cut down his 10 sacks that he gave last year and reduce that to 5, maybe that's something that they do there. But that was the only issue I had with it. I wanted him back as a backup, not compensated at that rate. But yeah, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if they see something in this team that I'm not seeing. But to me, Bobby Hart was a bad move, if I have to grade it. CJ Uzoma was a good move. They also brought back Preston Brown on a 3-year deal. The numbers for that deal haven't been released yet, but it seems like they're doing their homework. Like, usually, like, my initial thought when Zach Taylor was going to take over was going to be that there will be some turnover on this roster. It seems like he's impressed with the roster that Marvin Lewis put together. And one thing that I will say is, a lot of people talk about the Rams and this and that, how they remade the Rams. The Rams, we were 6-10. The Rams were 7-9. All they really did that first year was add Andrew Whitworth, and I'm not sure if Robert Woods was already there or not. But they really didn't do much. They didn't really change that roster over too much that first year. The Bengals also have other priorities. Like some people might be upset that they didn't go after Jawan James and things of that nature, but don't forget that they also have to re-sign Tyler Boyd, AJ Green. We'll have to see what happens with Darquez Dennard. I think that if they don't re-sign him and they re-sign Bobby Hart, that to me is a huge mistake. But we'll have to see. The numbers are different there. You weren't going to be able to get away with paying Darquez Dennard $5.5 million a year. That just wasn't going to happen. So we'll see what happens. But for now, that's kind of my report on that. One thing that I wanted to vent about as well, like I just kind of got tired of hearing about it, was that the Bengals should trade for the Cardinals quarterback Josh Rosen. There were reports that most believe that Kyler Murray will be taken number one, and that means that Josh Rosen will be shopped. So this is the thing that I don't understand. If a team is willing to trade up to get a guy, number 10, he goes out, he doesn't have a great rookie year. He wasn't in the best circumstances, but to me, there were several rookies that weren't in great circumstances either that still played better than him. I look at a guy like Josh Allen, he played better. I can't name you who his wide receiver was. Like when Kelvin Benjamin wasn't eating fruit snacks and, taking plays off, I don't know what was happening up there. Shady wasn't even there for most of the year. They were pretty trash. But they still did better than the Cardinals. You look at the New York Jets. Sam Bradford came into that situation. He really only had Robbie Anderson to throw to. There literally was no one else other than him, Chris Ivory. You're talking about a guy in Josh Rosen that at least at a minimum had Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson. I understand that the coaching staff wasn't amazing, but you didn't really give them a chance to actually even have any success. They fired everyone after the first year, which most teams around the league and most coaches that were looking into that job passed on the job because they did that. But when you look at that team, I see a lot of people blaming it on the coaching staff. I see a lot of people blaming it on the offensive line. This is a team that's not much different than it was 2 years ago with just Carson Palmer being there and Bruce Arians being the head coach. Not that much has changed. Like, honestly, like the only person that I could really point to that's not there is the Honey Badger, John Brown. But everyone else is basically still there. So to me, I just don't understand how our fans could want a guy that the Cardinals will turn around a year after drafting him. They've done all the research on him. They've had this guy in their building and everything, and they are willing to trade him a year later. Why would you think that that guy is still like the prospect that he was coming out? And I understand that. Like, he was a great prospect coming out, but just because you were a great prospect does not mean that you're going to be a great player in the NFL. We see it happen all the time. So I just can't believe that so many people are just like literally like, oh my God, it's just like the Josh Rosen fan club. And to me, if you're going to turn around and take a guy, like if you said player A was a top 10 pick and the next year you're trading him for a third rounder, that's a bust. That's a bust. It's very early to say that he's a bust, but that team is already, in their opinion, saying that they made a mistake. So to me, I don't think it works. I don't think that you should pay that much money. You're talking about a guy that was drafted 10th overall. You look at Pittsburgh, they just had to trade Antonio Brown, pay all of that dead money. There's definitely going to be some compensation for a guy like Josh Rosen. Why bring that on your team when you can take a guy like Daniel Jones from Duke in the second round if that's what you want to do? And to me, I don't think like a lot of people are saying the stupidest thing ever. Josh Rosen would be number one if he was coming out this year. No, he's not, because the Cardinals have the number one pick and they're still taking Kyler Murray. Like, I don't think that you could even trade him for a first-round pick right now. Like, unless it's the Patriots at 32, I don't think anybody else is going to cough up a first-rounder for Josh Rosen. There were reports out there that someone may be willing to part with, like, a third-round pick, which is horrible. That just means that he's not that good. So I just, don't think that that's a good fit for the Bengals. If I understand that you want to fix the quarterback situation, but I don't think Josh Rosen is the answer. And I also don't want a guy with the attitude that he has on my team. Like, that's not a guy that's going to put his head down and go to work like A.J. McCarron did when he was here as the backup. This is a guy that has an ego. This is a guy that thinks he is, world class and all of this. We don't need that in the locker room, in my opinion. That's just me. I just don't think that he's as good as he says he was. He said that there were 9 mistakes made ahead of him before the draft. It doesn't look like it going off of year one. So I'm by no means saying that he's a bust, but I do not think that this guy is what some of our fans are making him to be. That's how I feel about Rosen. But so far in Bengals free agency, I'm really kind of surprised that they were so active on the first day. Even though it was really only re-signing our own guys, I was still surprised to see them re-sign 3 guys on the first day. So I don't know if that's a new thing from the front office or what's going on there. Just wish that it would have been like some other guys, but honestly, it's not going to be those outside guys that are top tier free agents because you have to pay them big money. So we'll see what happens and continues to happen. We have to see what happens with Le'Veon Bell, whether he will be staying in the AFC North with the Ravens or whether he will be moving on with the Jets. But I think that the Bengals so far are having a decent offseason outside of the Bobby Hart thing. So, hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I know that a lot of you guys are upset. I understand it. But we'll have to see what happens. But as usual, I'll leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.